Every single day, people take unwanted or unused items to thrift and antique stores across the country. But as the saying goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and we're here to prove it. Identify valuable things before you throw them away. Join us as we show and tell of treasures found and sold by a full-time reseller with the hopes of helping you find some treasures of your own. Welcome to the What's Sold podcast.
Welcome back to the What Sold podcast. As always, I'm Brandon, here with my friend Matt, who is a full-time reselling merchant, secondary market merchant. We don't call them resellers. We're way more sophisticated than that. I wish we had a
That's
French
just a
term
personal
with the
hang-up
Olympics.
for me. That's just my own hang-up, I think. I just need to get over it, I suppose. But
I suppose if you're making good money doing what you're doing, it really doesn't matter what you call it. I call it
Sure.
getting paid, Matt. I call it getting paid.
yeah, I mean, it's a job, right? It's, but it's been an interesting, time in the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's a low part of the year, sort of end of July, and we're approaching August, and it doesn't take much to really think through why that is. At the end of July, it's summer's rounding out. People have spent money on taking trips and doing things, which is more than what they would normally spend. And then they're preparing for, let's say, kids going back to school, their expenses because of that reason. And people also just tighten up at the end of summer as they enter the fall. And so this is not a very great time for sales. Sales are slower. There's fewer sales. There's less money coming in. And so I've been doing a few things in my store to try to continue generating sales, but the sales I'm getting are typically of lesser value items and maybe things I've held on to for a while, so I'm trying to move them through. But, this is it's a part of the business, so you have to know that there are going to be slow times. You should know that ahead of time and have a game plan.
What are the slowest
when
times
that
of the
comes.
year so the summer's going to be slow for lots of reasons. People are traveling, things are going on. I mean, it is what it is. But I see that the same thing in like podcasts. You see seasons where everybody's listening, typically in the winter when people are indoors or they're traveling or they're in their cars. Summertime, it's lighter because people are out and about and doing what they're doing. But what seasons do you see a slowdown? So if somebody's in there and they're starting out and they're like, what should I look for?
Well, things will start picking up back again in September, and really September through the end of the year, but primarily November and December are good because people are spending for holidays and a lot of things happen at the end of the year. So those are always good. The fourth quarter rather is good. That's the last 3 months of the year. And then January is good because people are spending the money that they got for Christmas, right? And so then it kind of dies off around February. And into March is usually kind of slow and dead. And then March, it picks back up again all the way until you hit summer. And really, June, July, and August are really kind of lower months. People are more active, and they're traveling, they're spending money elsewhere. And so, like in the middle of the year, really like quarter 2 and 3, a good portion of those, 6 months aren't great. You get a lot of stuff at the end of the year and in the very beginning of the year. And then it's just sort of hit or miss. March to April is okay. And then June, July, not so great. Into August, you're kind of starting to build back up again in September. And so it's kind of a little bit of a roller coaster, but it mirrors honestly the typical retail market as well. So people do really well. Retail stores, online stores do really well in the fourth quarter, preparing for Christmas and gift giving times of year. And when people are getting back to school after that first wave of spending Christmas money in January, once that's over, it's going to be slow through February. It's just cold. People are indoors. You'd think that they would spend more money, but they just don't as much. Now, again, I sell primarily antiques and collectibles. It's not the same for everything. If you sell goods that are perishable that people need all year long and there is no seasonability to it, then you might have a different experience. But And also, like, if you just sell sports equipment, well, the summer is actually your time. People want to buy the stuff then and not as much in the winter. It really kind of depends on what you're selling. But for me, things that are not seasonable, usually, they don't have a peak interest at certain seasons. Some of the things I sell are that way. But a person who's interested in collecting a pocket watch in February, is going to have just as much interest in collecting that in November. And so it doesn't really matter to them.
Right. Is your office still filled with miscellaneous things that you need to move?
Always.
Yeah, but I've been there, and it wasn't that. I mean, the way you talked about it last week or a couple weeks ago, I don't remember when it was now, but it was just like you had stuff everywhere.
Well, I had some stuff on the floor, and it's funny you ask because just, in the last hour or two, I was doing a little bit of rearranging, consolidating things in some tubs and trying to free up some floor space. I'm about to take a trip to Santa Cruz. We had talked about that on the previous episode. I'm leaving on Wednesday. I'll come back the following Monday. And so I really just, for my own feeling of being, clean and not leaving things in shambles, I wanted to get things kind of organized a little bit. So I did that, and I'm happy. But I've always got things coming in. I also haven't really sourced a whole lot in the last month, to be honest. And so part of my ability to kind of move stuff out is that I haven't been replenishing what I'm what I'm getting rid of as quickly as I do on a typical basis.
Is that on purpose that you haven't sourced, or is that simply because you've just had too much stuff going on?
It's on purpose. I spent a bunch of money on a large pocket watch collection and a couple of other things. And so I kind of wanted to wait until some of that money comes back in-house before. And so you pair having a large expense happening right at a time when you're going to have a lower than average sales. That's not a real good recipe for success. And so the only way that I can combat that is by tightening up my spending. So sure, I'm making less than I normally make, but if I completely stop spending, then it will not feel as bad. It'll still feel like a low month, but it won't. I have no cash going out, and so I retain that, and then it's not as big of an impact.
Yeah. And, like you said, the pocket watches could sell this week. I mean, it could be 6 months. I mean, it depends on what it is. So
I would say I've sold
like
probably 30 to 40% of them have sold. I packaged up 3 more lots of them, 4 pocket watches per lot. They were about $500 a lot, so I'm getting $120 a watch on some of the ones that I just sold. But yeah, I want to pull that in and then not let it go out immediately. I'm waiting, I want to wait for a good deal.
Who do you think is actually buying the pocket watches?
Collectors, people who want to, so collectors of the watches themselves, people who want to scrap the cases for gold, people who want to work on the movements that aren't working. People just get enjoyment out of that as a hobby. And sometimes they get them as gifts for other people. There's a variety of reasons, of types of buyers out there.
I just rarely see that guy pull out of his waistcoat the pocket watch as he clicks, you know what I mean?
Yes.
On his gold chain that's looped around.
It's not
I'd love
common
to meet that guy and hang out with that guy. I just don't
it's
see
not
him
common
that
to see
often.
people with them anymore, right? Like using them, because you've got everyone has a tells time on their smartphones, or they have a watch, and so they certainly not need it anymore, and it's not even really in vogue as an attire to have it as. It was both a functional piece, but also almost like jewelry at the time. It kind of showed, style and maybe wealth in some cases. But it's like any of these older, items that have been around for a long time. They build a collector base over time, and I mean there are museums dedicated to clocks and watches, and they have steady flow of people coming in. So there is still interest, even though they aren't used quite in the same way as they once were. But I just find them fascinating because something that's 150 years old and is made of such complex, tiny components, and that they still work today and they keep time is just incredible. To me, that's an incredible feat of design and the work that people have done. You think that they wouldn't have the technology to do some of that stuff that long ago, but they did, and they did a really good job. And so good, in fact, that, they're still working today. And we talked about that with old tools and stuff too. It's like I have tools that I use now that are older than me, twice as old as I am, and will outlive me. Somebody else will be using them after I'm gone because they were made so well.
Yeah. And obviously the craftsmanship was based on material they used, and,
Sure.
they weren't probably cutting corners the way that, manufacturers do today because they want to save money, obviously. No plastic parts, all of it's metal, the whole thing. So, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So as you move into the, kind of the closing part of the summer, what's your thinking in terms of how you're preparing for the fall? Because you said that's a big time. What do you do to prepare for that?
Well, there's not a whole lot I necessarily have to do to generate those bigger sales at the end of the year because they just sort of naturally happen. But I will say put some stuff together in lots. Like I do have stuff that is Christmas themed. Like I do have some Christmas themed jewelry or some little figurines or stuff, and those I'm holding on to and waiting to list when it's closer to Christmas because that's a peak time. But more prep to run a ton of auctions during that time when I start to see a pickup in sales. I'm just going to flood with a bunch of low-cost auctions and try to just move a bunch of stuff out and bring in some cash for new things. If it's sat here for 6 months, I want to get rid of it because it just didn't sell. It probably came in with a lot of other stuff. I didn't buy it individually, and yet I have it. It still has value. And so I don't want to really waste a lot of time with that stuff because I knew from the beginning that some of these items were not that valuable, but they're still valuable enough, at least to me now, that they're not ready to be donated. I mean, but I will do that too. Towards the end of the year, I'll do that. I've been also funneling a lot of stuff off to some contract workers that I have to list things, and I pay them for that. But I'm starting to get a little bit low on some inventory again because I haven't been sourcing a whole lot in the last month. And so I actually am meeting with somebody again tomorrow to move off some more stuff. And then I'm leaving on a trip, right, for a week. I won't be sourcing during that week. By the time I come back, they're going to be ready for more stuff. And I don't know what I'm going to have for them yet. I'm going to have to go probably to the remaining storage unit that I have and start digging some stuff out of there because it's sitting and waiting, but my office area is getting pretty well done as far as the items I have being available for sale. I mean, I've got somewhere around 6,000 items in my eBay stores right now. They're all in here, and I'm not going to be necessarily buying a whole lot more until some of these sell. And so some of what I've been doing is I'm really heavy on inventory. So instead of buying more and more inventory, I just need to save the money. And then my work becomes trying to do different little creative things within the store that I have to sell stuff I've already got. And, a lot of people have trouble making themselves do the listings. They buy it and it's fun to have it. It's fun to go out and source, but then they don't do the stuff. I'm not as much like that. I don't have a problem doing the work, but once everything's listed, now I've got kind of a newer novel problem that I haven't had much before, which is I've got a bunch of stuff. I don't really need to go source anymore, but I still need to get revenue. So how do I get stuff sold that's been sitting there that hasn't sold? Well, I have to be creative. I have to lump it into lots, or I have to drop the price. I have to be paying eBay extra to promote my items to more people, or I have to send offers or accept offers lower than I would normally accept them just to make the sale. I sold one thing I'll tell you. Well, this is kind of a segue. We talked about a large lot of these Royal Copenhagen dishes and bowls and plates and things that I bought. I paid $200 for them at an estate sale. I thought they were worth way more than they had them listed for. So I told the lady, and she said, okay, well, I'll raise the price, but if it doesn't sell, then you're going to buy them. And I said, okay, I'll do that. So I did. I bought them. This has been about not quite 30 days ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. There was 21 separate items, so between small saucers all the way up to large bowls and serving platters, and they sold yesterday for $650.
Oh wow!
So paid $200. So I'm going to net over $300 profit off of that after fees and things. So I was really happy about that sale. That's one of those where if I had waited, I probably could have sold it for another $100 or $200. But again, I'm about to leave. I'm trying to move stuff, not spend money. So that money in my hand today is worth more to me than another $100 6 months from now. And so that's why I made the change.
Well, that makes sense. So that sold this week. That's my favorite part of the show. So what else sold?
I got another. I've had several things. I've unfortunately packaged a lot of them up already to go out today because I've set up the Postal Service to come collect the items from me, so I don't have to take them there. This was a sterling silver necklace, just a chain with it's all tangled here, a pendant. It's the shape of a cross, but it features lab-grown emeralds and cubic zirconia and some onyx, and it's like a gold plating over sterling silver. And this was a $3 purchase at a thrift store, and it sold for $42. So that's not too bad.
It looks like something that a vampire hunter would have in their
right.
kit.
Exactly.
When the vampire comes, they pull out the sterling silver cross. It's like so.
Yeah. And
so large.
like crosses and some of these well-known symbols, they always sell. I mean, it's just a matter of how long it takes, but they always sell because there's lots of people who wear jewelry or things that have certain significance, whether it's a cross or whether it's an animal that you like. If it's a cat-shaped thing that you care about cats, and so you're getting jewelry. But that stuff always sells. I also mentioned on a previous episode how I was selling a bunch of parts and components from a G.I. Joe from the 80s, a G.I. Joe set.
Aircraft carrier we talked about last week.
The first item, and you can see this large kind of plastic component here. This sold for $30, and it's just one of, I don't know, dozens and dozens of different pieces, but the model number is M4106B, and it's written, I have it taped on here, but it's actually written on the actual, I say it's written, it's not written, but it's, imprinted, the code, stamped, the serial number of this particular component, so you can look it up and you know which set it came from and what the piece is. But somebody had one of these that was broken. Maybe the door was broken off. Maybe it got something fell on it or whatever, and they want to replace it with a newer one. It's not new, obviously, it's old, but it's a replacement part. And so we're going to go through and sell this. But one of those did sell already, $30. I'm selling this for someone else, so not all of that money is going to come to me, but it'll just be a slow burn, as any of these collectible action figures or things. If you're selling, whether it's a part of a set, like some sort of like a vehicle or something like that, versus just a handgun or something that goes to a figure. But all of those things have value, and you can sell them individually. And so there are people who have whole shops just dedicated to replacement. Like, this is the little glove or the little whatever that came with, this is the little thing that stuck in his back that, like the quiver with arrows that went to this particular G.I. Joe figure. And people will buy those because they want to make their collections complete. Like, maybe they have everything except for the one item and they want to get that.
I can appreciate that. I've done that one time. My daughter and I collect quarters, the mint quarters.
Oh,
and
nice.
we had all 50 states except for one. And I don't know how I missed it. I would wait till they came out. And so I just kind of went online and went on eBay, and there was a person selling. It was like $1 for the quarter, but obviously the quarter was 25 cents. So they,
face value.
And it was an easy ship. So I was thinking about that recently, about how you do your business. Like, that's a kind of business where the mailing, the postage is cheap, it's quick and easy, and they make 200% on the. I mean, they collect the quarter or whatever, and so anyway. But it's just because I wanted to have, I didn't want to have 49, Matt. I wanted 50 in the collection.
Well, and do you have them all yet?
Oh yeah, we got them. I bought this.
Nice.
I bought this thing so I could frame it, and so it hangs in my daughter's room, so she'll remember all the states. Oh yeah, it's pretty fun. But anyway, so yes, there are always going to be somebody out there like me willing to pay you a premium to get their 49th or.
That's right. Well, and it's interesting, really interesting to me, buying currency. Buying or even stamps, which do have value based on what the face value is of what it costs. But that's a lot of times that's what they'll do, is they'll put up a lot of things and they'll say this is $6.25 face value. But depending on what it is, it might be worth way more than that.
Right.
Right. because of its collectability. Uncirculated coins especially have top value because they're in mint condition.
So interesting that it's driven by people's desire to have collections. Like our desire to have collections is so fascinating.
I know. Well, there's so many interesting things out there in the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody has their little quirk that they want to fill. So, I guess we could do a whole show on how do you determine what quirk, what spot you want to think. I would think that my bet would be that most of the people that are selling like coins or the model replacement parts are people that actually enjoy that item, right?
Right.
So you're selling guitars.
So.
It'd be tough to sell guitars if you didn't actually like guitars. But,
sure.
I mean,
you say that. There are a lot of things I sell that I do not care anything for at all.
No, I know, but I'm talking about collectibles per se.
But people who are collecting a thing.
So if you're like in that business where it's that specific a thing. So you sold a Vampire Cross and you sold the part to the G.I. Joe collection.
Yeah.
But today we want to talk about something that we've kind of skirted the edges of this quite a bit on the show over time, and you and I have talked about this. It's like most of the people that are listening to this show are part-time sellers. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. I would bet you, I don't know the exact numbers, but I bet you that for every full-time seller like yourself, there's probably 50 part-time sellers, right? So let's talk about a person who's working on this. Maybe they're retired, maybe they're not, but maybe like you, they're like, hey, I really like doing this, but I've been doing it part-time now. I'm ready to go for it. You were forced into it. But what are the kinds of things or what is the tipping point from being a full-time part-time or part-time to full-time, I should say?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what the tipping point is because there's different circumstances out there. There's a person who's never really done reselling before, but they're very interested in it, and they're trying to decide, do I jump all in and try to make a living at this from the beginning, or do I just kind of maybe I have a job, I don't maybe love it, but it gives me a stable income. There's stability there. I've got retirement building, and so but I would who doesn't want some extra money? So I want to kind of dip my toe into this and do this part time. Then there are people who have been doing it part time for a while, and they kind of got the hang of it, and they're like, I wonder if what would it take to jump into this full time? So I don't know, listener, what your circumstances are, but I will say that I have been selling part time from very, very, very low level to higher, doing it weekly for a while, but still part time for about 25 years. I've only been doing it full time for about 4.5 years. So that gives you an idea. I had been selling for about 20 years on eBay before I decided to do full-time. And my decision to do full-time had everything to do with life circumstances and not driven by a curiosity or trying to move away from something else that I didn't care about because I thought that this would be more lucrative or more interesting. It is very interesting. It can be very lucrative. But I guess my advice to people would be, if you're a person who hasn't really done a whole lot of it yet, you should do it part-time for a while, possibly even years, before you take a step to doing it full-time. The number of people who are selling full-time as a quote-unquote reseller has jumped up dramatically since 2020. Since COVID caused interruptions, I am a prime example of that. I got into this full-time because I lost the job I had as a result of things shutting down, and I had to make income quickly. And my circumstances, because I already had experience with eBay, I started doing it full-time. But I was just trying to find anything I could find that I could make money on. So I was very much a generalist, and I was trying to learn as much as I possibly could. What I think is better are a couple of things. One is use eBay and buy and sell on there. I'm not going to tell you how long, but get some experience, get some under your belt, buy some things, sell some things, get on a phone with eBay and talk about, if you have an interaction you don't like, or figure out what it's like to talk with the representatives and figure out what that process is like. And once you know kind of how you need to do the basic stuff, meaning how you make a listing, how you make a good photograph, what types of things do you need to have in your titles, what, if anything, should you have in your descriptions, Do you feel comfortable doing both auctions and buy it now? So you should try both of those. Get a handle on that. You should learn what types of things seem to sell well or quickly based on what you have available to you to get. So I think it's good to get experience and then get a plan about the type of items you want to sell. Do you have a never-ending supply of the specific thing that you want to sell? You don't have to necessarily pick just one thing, but I think it is smart to pick either a category of things or things that have similarities. So for me, I buy and sell antiques and collectibles. That's very, very broad. But the thing that makes them all kind of fit for me is that all like 90+% of the things that I buy and sell can fit in a 6 by 6 by 6 inch box or smaller. And what that means is at all times, I have boxes, bubble mailers, and all of the packing supplies already on hand. I don't have to go search for those later or wonder. I also, because I've done it enough, I know almost exactly what it's going to cost, whether it's going 2 towns away or to the Oregon coast, the complete other side of the country from where I live. I know those things. So that helps me when I'm calculating in my mind how much it's going to cost me to buy it, how long I think it's going to take to sell it. You need to know what the eBay fees are going to be. You need to know what it's going to cost you to ship items, storage of items. You want to know that information for yourself before you try to really kick it up to full time, because kicking up to full time isn't just about, okay, well, now I'm selling more stuff and therefore I'm making more money. It gets way more complicated because in order to sell a high enough volume to make a living at it, you have to have a large inventory. You have to be really good at listing things frequently, quickly, large volumes. You have to be ready to be packaging and shipping out large volumes of things. I say that unless you have deep pockets and you're just going to sell like Rolex watches and you only have to sell one item every 2 months. Do you know what I mean? I don't do that because to me, that's really risky to spend a ton of money and it's all leveraged on the sale of one item. So right. I spend less money and I sell a higher volume of things, and I found a way to make a living at that. But I think it's really, really good to learn the basics. And then when it's time, when you really want to move into it, I wouldn't just cold turkey quit, your job and be like, okay, I'm doing it. I think you should slowly increase what you're doing, make sure you have a tolerance for it, make sure you can get those things shipped out within your window. It's not too much work. Are you having to work a ton at night? Figuring out how much work it's actually going to take to do it, and then move into it. So I'm suggesting you do something completely different than what I did, because I had to struggle through a lot of things because I didn't have a plan. I also think that you should have a decent amount of capital at your disposal, and I think you should save. I don't know what your monthly costs are, but I think if I were doing it over again, what I recommend to people now is don't, start relying on this as your job to make your full-time income unless you have at least 3 months of your costs saved. So what is it going to cost? What are all of your costs in 1 month? And then multiply that times 3. You should have that in cash, I think, saved and ready, or have a loan for that amount, right? Or access, like a rolling line of credit or something, whatever you feel comfortable with. But you need to have that kind of money at your disposal. And this is tying directly into what we were talking about earlier. You're going to have several months that are low months. What do you do when you have a low month? If you're just starting out and you've depleted your cash to buy your inventory, you don't even have it all listed yet, it's selling slower than you expected, that's a bad situation unless you have backup money and funds to help you weather that period of time and get you back in a position on a month when things are going to be going really well.
Yeah, I have a friend a real close friend who happens to just be a pastor, leads music at a church and whatever. He's a musician, and he lives in San Francisco, and I imagine this is probably true in a lot of major cities, but maybe even smaller cities, depending. He finds stuff. He's a funny guy in that way. He finds stuff. People in big cities and in wealthy neighborhoods do not want to deal with getting rid of stuff. So they'll put out brand new or close to brand new items, nice furniture, whatever. He doesn't do this like full time, but if he's driving down the street and he sees something, he's like, that, I could sell that. He picks it up, and he's also kind of crafty like you. He reconditions it. Yeah. Well, he probably sells 50 things a month that he got for free, that he has zero cost
in.
because people,
It's
now,
great.
obviously it's his time and he has to ship in and that.
Of course.
And he's always, and it's, in San Francisco, it's Craigslist. Everybody buys off of Craigslist. But it's just interesting how people's avenues into it can come from so many different directions. Like you said, maybe you're interested in a certain type of collectible and that leads you that way. Maybe you're forced to, like you did. Maybe you just see an opportunity and you see it as a great side hustle. I guess that's what the idea is figuring out at what point do you actually move from side hustle to full-time job. And that's what you've been pushing out.
Yeah. I mean, are you making enough money that you can live off the income? Are you getting close? Are you getting to a point where you're like, okay, I'm close enough that if I devoted this much more of my time to it, I should be able to, if I'm just doing the same things I'm just doing more of the same, then I can make that money. Then it's probably time to try that out. But you have to gauge what you're going to be moving potentially from something that's steady income at least or guaranteed. As long as you go in and you punch your time card, you know what you're going to make. eBay's not like that. You're guaranteed nothing. It doesn't matter how nice of a thing you have, how many things you have, if all of them are listed or not. You're dependent upon somebody else wanting what you have and being willing to pay for it. And that can happen a lot in 1 month and almost none at all in another month. It just depends. You really don't know. That's why I say it's good to have money, backup money and funds, because if you have a month where people don't want, it's not like any other job where if you do the work, you're going to make money. In fact, you don't know how much you're going to make. And when you make money, you don't actually get to spend that money for 30 days because somebody on the 29th day can say, hey, I don't like this now. I want to send it back. And all of a sudden, you have to give that money back. And then you've lost all that time too, because you couldn't use that money. Now you have to go try to search for another buyer. And so everything that you're doing, you're having to project out a month, 30 to 45 days before you can actually use those funds. So the 3-month thing, like you got to have enough money to get you by for a whole month, not spending any of the money that you earned from selling in that first month.
So it sounds like what you're telling us is do exactly the opposite of what you did.
Exactly.
When you started in this business.
Yes. Exactly.
But it's interesting, and in all seriousness, sometimes when you're forced into a business, it can really be successful. It's not that there is one way to do this.
Correct.
There are many ways to do this. I wouldn't recommend people take out a home equity loan to fund their business. But if you're selling and you feel pretty confident and all you're missing is, some capital to move it, and there's always going to be risk. Always.
Sure. Yep.
And so you're going to have to understand that going in. If you're picking stuff off the street and you're reconditioning it and selling to people, very little, if no risk.
And there's no cost of goods there either, which is amazing, right? It's just free.
But you're also reliant on someone putting it out on the curb.
Sure.
And so yes, that's great. But on the flip side of that is that that's not consistent. You can't guarantee that's going to be there. So thinking through like the different areas that where am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to be able to do this?
Well, that's a good thing that you mentioned. Is just like that there's a risk because it's inconsistent. And if you're the kind of person that will be very stressed out when things are not consistent or that you can't predict, selling online, reselling full time is probably not for you, because that is a fundamental component of this, is that there's risk involved and you're dependent upon someone else. Yeah, you're dependent upon yourself and your own work, sure. But the sale itself, it's inconsistent. 1 week you'll be selling a ton of stuff, the next week you won't. And you're looking at the bills that are going to be, those things come consistently every month, your costs in life. But if you aren't okay with having an income that's inconsistent week to week, month to month, then maybe you should consider something else. That to me was the hardest thing for me, was I'm relying on this money that I can't count on. So
right.
What do you do?
Well, and I think there's also an element to this of knowing who you really are and being honest with yourself.
Sure.
When you're working at a job, and maybe you're not necessarily good at one thing, but you probably can figure it out. But when you're working for yourself and you've got to make it go, do you have the discipline to get up early? Do you have the discipline to be consistent in listing the items? Right? If you're a kind of person that's like, man, have a hard time, I procrastinate, or I have a hard time doing that, you might want to think about something else.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't want to work for yourself. Maybe you don't want to be, because ultimately there's an incredible amount of freedom in working for yourself. There's also an incredible amount of stress.
Yeah. And risk.
And risk that's involved. And hey, if you're the kind of person that doesn't mind that, this is the business for you, for sure.
And there's no one's telling you how high to shoot, like how much you can make it. A lot of it is your creativity and your hard work, and it can go as far as you push yourself to get. But it also doesn't. I mean, it gives you a ton of freedom, like you mentioned. The time is one of the biggest benefits of this type of work, I think. But I also, I think, well, sometimes it might be nice to just sit back and know what I'm making, or know, hey, I've got this time, and when I go on vacation, I'm getting paid, and I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
But for me, I have to work twice as hard the week before and twice as hard the week I get back. And I'm not earning anything from that week that I didn't work. So there are differences there. It's not for everybody.
It's finding the nuance in whatever it is that you're doing. I wanted to give sort of a sort of update as we move forward, some of the topics that we're going to be talking about in the next couple of weeks. Now, Matt is going on vacation. I asked him the other day, I was like, wait, do you just go on vacations all the time? He's like,
all the time.
No, I don't. And I'm like, aren't you going on vacation next week? He's like, wait, I am going on vacation next week.
Yeah.
So Matt is enjoying the fruits of his labors, and we wish him to have the best at Mission Hill ice cream. Well, a couple of topics that we're going to be talking about in the next month or so, 6 weeks, is selling gold and where to find gold, how one sources. We've talked about different general ideas of sourcing, but we're going to be talking about what do you do when you go on a sourcing road trip? What does that look like? Do you get a hotel? All that kind of stuff as we go forward. And then we're going to also talk about using tools like Google Lens and other items. So we have a lot of kind of topics that are getting more into the nitty-gritty of things. We always say that if you have a question or a comment, or you're like, hey, this would be a great idea, send it to us at whatsoldpodcast@gmail.com, and we will look into it. You can also email in any of the YouTube channels. The Rusty channels are out there. Maybe Rusty himself will get back to you. I can guarantee you, Matt, but I can't guarantee you, Rusty. That's just really
he's sort of a live wire. You really don't know.
He's a loose cannon. You don't know what you're going to get with that one. But otherwise, that's all we have time for today. Matt, anything else you want to share before you head off into the sunset?
Don't let this scare you if you're really interested in doing reselling full time. Just spend some time and do some research. And when you do it long enough, you will hit some of those pain points for yourself, either the work or the frustration over interactions with other people, or just the money's not coming in. And just really sit and think on those things and think to yourself, I mean, every job has its pros and cons, right? Even the job you have right now has its cons. Reselling has its cons also. You may in some cases just be trading some bad things for other different things that you don't like. But what are the things that are important to you? So is it just, why would you want to be doing it? Is it just to make money? Or is it because you want to be able to work for yourself? Or is it because you want to have the freedom? You're willing to do the things you don't, that's not real fun, in order to have that flexibility, because that's missing from your job. Really think on those things, and then you'll have a good idea if it makes sense or not. But definitely do it part-time, because it's not hard to do. There's tons of stuff out there you can make money on, and it's great to have kind of some side cash, outside of your typical job that you have.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Remember to follow, like, and subscribe if you get a chance. Otherwise, that is all the time we have today. So we'll be signing off, and we'll see you with a brand new show next week.
See you soon.